Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and this video came out, so let's answer some of the comments that came up under it. Which I do feel like this is a bit like fillery, but there's like a lot of the thing is the video had to be under 30 minutes long, so it's not like I could do because here's the thing. Basically, how every single motherboard got onto this list is normally I'd go like with a first instinct, like, oh, this is a good motherboard. And then I'd start looking at other motherboards at around the same price point, and I'd be like, oh, well, does it have more USB ports, SATA ports, similar networking capabilities? Is there like internal Type-C, which is a port I couldn't literally care less about, but people apparently do. How many M.2 slots does it have? You know, that kind of thing. So I started just, like, I chose a motherboard, and then I do a bunch of comparisons against similarly priced boards, and ultimately the boards that ended up in the list normally just have the most stuff. So yeah, anyway, there's a bunch of comments where we're just going to address those. Actually, let's start with the Reddit ones, because there's the least of them. There's just 8 on r/AMD right now, and like 11 on r/hardware. So anyway, the first thing I'd like to point out, this guy, like, I don't know how he got that, because it's like he got the B550M. How did the B450 mortar get back onto the list? I have no idea. Especially since it's ordered by price. Anyway, so yeah, that's supposed to be B550. Also, if you're wondering, like, I'll probably send him a message after shooting this video. Well, he's edited it 3 hours ago. I wonder if he's still online. Anyway, as always, a reminder that Buildzoid's perspective is overclocking, not simple normal use. Yeah, that looks like a real overclocking motherboard lineup right there. Like, no, they're like, this. I hate these comments so much, because specifically for the Gamers Nexus videos, I lean as normie in my motherboard selection as bloody possible, and then some normie shows up in the comment section and goes, perspective is overclocking, not simple use, and then he follows it up with, recommend all my friends buying 3600s to get it works very well on a B550M Pro 4, and it's like, that board is literally in the bloody list, man! There's not a single motherboard that I would actually consider buying myself. Actually, no, I'd probably buy this. And this, like, I've actually bought this. That's a good board. I'd happily buy that. And I'd happily buy this. Everything else, though, is just kind of like, nope. Especially the X570. Well, actually, I just don't like X570 motherboards in general. Mostly because they, like... mostly because of how the chipset behaves with BCLK overclocking. Which, again, is like that's a super hardcore overclocking method, which, like, you don't need, which is why we have a bunch of bloody X570 motherboards on the list. Anyway, instead of some overpriced B550 that's good at overclocking, like, oh, I don't know, the B550 Unify X. So this is not an overclocking motherboards list. This is just like... because the biggest difference between the B550 chipset and the X570 chipset is not actually the overclocking capabilities, it's that you get more M.2 ports and more SATA ports. Both of which, well, SATA ports I do care about. M.2 slots, though, I couldn't give less of a damn. Okay, I literally don't have any M.2 devices except for maybe some Wi-Fi cards that came as an added bonus with some motherboard that I bought at some point. So, like, so comments like this, like... How much more normie do I have to make this bloody list? I guess it's not so much not simple normal use. It's more like for people who can't afford more than a $200 motherboard, which is fair. I'm not saying everybody has to buy a $300 board. But, like, you can't call this an overclocking motherboard list, considering I've not listed any motherboards that I straight up don't like overclocking on the X570 Taichi. So much so that I traded it to a friend for a graphics card. Yeah, you know, it's like... Anyway, and then the X570 Creator, like, this thing literally only got into the list because it has Thunderbolt 3 and 10 gig LAN, which is like, yeah, there's some real overclocking features right there. 5900X okay. I literally say that the bloody A520M Elite can take a stock 5950X. It's not much, like, it's not that difficult to run a 140 watt CPU at stock. Like, you just do need a VRM heatsink. Actually, well, if you have a downdraft air cooler, you don't even need the VRM heatsink. And the CPU will admittedly power throttle a little bit, but I don't think that's even down to the VRM temperatures. That's just the motherboards having, like, low EDC limits if you go cheap enough. Anyway, firstly, have stock of got X570 Taichi pretty much because I've been using X370 Taichi. Glad to see it's actually good. To be fair, compared to the X370 Taichi, the X570 is way better. The X370, like it was kind of bad when I first got it. It's gotten worse over time. And this motherboard, I've been recommending this motherboard regularly. Like, this one was in, I think, the very first X570 motherboard roundup. Anyway, let's take the hardware on r/hardware comments. Why no best overclocking? Because somebody added jam to the potato salad. Because, like, actually, this is a funny one. So I didn't do a best overclocking motherboard. Because I didn't really... So there's a bunch of things I don't like about the B550 Unify X. There's a bunch of things I don't like about my B550 Aorus Master. I've unfortunately not had a chance to test an X5... Like, I've not had a chance to mess with a new revision of the X570 Master. Which would probably get the recommendation. And I've not had a chance to test the X57... Like, I've not had a Dark Hero. So it's like... I don't want to... Like, I don't want to recommend a Unify X. Or a B5... Well, B550 Master straight up can't get it because bloody dual BIOS implementation. But that... Actually, no, because the X570 boards have the BCLK problem. So yeah, it's basically like there's no specific there's no like AM4 motherboard right now that I feel like does all the overclocking things. Like the Dark Hero doesn't even have a bloody clock gen. Like, not that the clock gen would help much because you're on the bloody X570 chipset, but like it doesn't have a clock gen, and it's a supposed extreme overclocking motherboard. It's which like the defense I heard from Asus is like, well, you can still increment the BCLK up to like 118 megahertz in 1 megahertz steps. And it's just like, well, that's very not helpful for like validation runs, where you really want to be able to go in fractional BCLK, or if you're just trying to max out Infinity Fabric and memory clock at the same time. Which also, like, the Master doesn't have a clock gen. There's a very, like, the Unify is actually one of the Unify X is one of the few motherboards to actually have a clock gen, have a B550 chipset, and then it doesn't have enough PCIe slots, and it is, like, and it doesn't have dual BIOS, and, like, there's some voltage settings currently missing in the BIOS, but I think MSI is going to eventually fix that. So it's like, I didn't do a best overclocking motherboard because, like, it really depends on what your goals are, in my opinion. For like what you want to do in terms of overclocking, and what you're willing to put up with in terms of like obnoxious motherboard design, because it's like, yeah, well, no, the Master, well, no, actually no, you could just go for the B550 Vision. Yeah, the Vision, but like the B550 Vision from Gigabyte kinda, like it's specifically because Gigabyte didn't build it as an overclocking board. It kinda doesn't do a lot of the obnoxious stuff like the Master does, and it does still have a postcode, so it's not in the same situation as an Aorus Pro V2, or actually any version of the Aorus Pro. Like, that board just doesn't have a postcode, which, yeah, very, very annoying if you're doing a lot of memory overclocking. Anyway, no B550 Tomahawk. The B550A Pro just has more, wait, he means the MSI. That's like a completely different price point. Why are you comparing those two motherboards? Like, this is a $180 board. That's a $140 board. How are they even remotely related? No, of course the $140 board isn't better. It's just that at $180, you could get a Gigabyte B550 Aorus Pro instead, which has more USB ports, and everything else is the same. So, obviously, this is the better board. How is the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Ultra? It has dual BIOS. I would avoid that. Like, I would really avoid that literally just because it has dual BIOS. Also, if I remember correctly, it doesn't really do anything that you wouldn't get from, like, it's 6 SATA ports. It's got, I think, 2 M.2 slots. Actually, let's just go to Gigabyte's website. So yeah, this is going to be a super rambly motherboard. I mean, a super rambly video. Where is it? X57. I am blind. Okay. Ultra. This is the old revision. Oh, it does have 3 M.2 slots. Decent rear I/O. There's no postcode. How much does this cost? Is this $300? Because I'm not paying $300 for that. That was something I was doing for a different video. Or like a video idea that got scrapped. There, that's the better way to put it. X570 Master. So the Ultra. Yeah, this is a $300 board. I don't really... Yeah, it's $300. You don't get a postcode. You get... So, like, if you want the M.2 slots, the Unify has the M.2 slots, and it gives you a postcode. And arguably... Well, actually, it does also give you a better VRM, but that's completely irrelevant at this price point. Or you can go for the Taichi, where you get a postcode, more SATA ports. Like, there's nothing wrong with this board. It's just that in terms of raw features, it's not really any better than these two over here. And if you care about like the BIOS being nice and easy to work with, then MSI just kind of has that on lockdown as far as I'm concerned. Like MSI's BIOS is currently my favorite. Gigabyte's BIOS, if you don't know what you're doing in Gigabyte, well, it's not even knowing what you're doing. Like Gigabyte just doesn't have certain settings in reasonable locations, so you just kind of have to go searching for them. ASRock actually does a pretty decent job of like organizing their BIOS as well, but their BIOS also sometimes has I'm still biased against ASRock motherboards. Their BIOS does weird stuff sometimes, and I'm not a fan of BIOSes doing weird stuff. So, whereas Gigabyte's BIOS just kind of doesn't do a lot of stuff. It's sort of the opposite issue, but anyway, yeah, like I don't know why you'd get the Ultra over the Unify. Or over the Taichi. Like, if you want more connector, like, if you want more SATA ports, the Taichi does a better job of that. If you just want the M.2 slots and overclocking, Unify is better. Also, it's worth noting, the Ultra comes with the super obnoxious dual BIOS implementation. And I'm going to keep complaining about it until Gigabyte, like, gets rid of it. Because it is so incredibly annoying to work with. Where is it? BIOS, 128 megabit. Yeah, you don't want dual BIOS. Trust me, you do not want dual BIOS. Not in this implementation, because like this doesn't have a switch to choose which BIOS chip you're on. So the board just kind of does it for you, and that gets really, really annoying really fast. Any other questions? Why didn't they include the Dark Hero? I already mentioned that. I've not had a chance to test the Dark Hero. It's a $400 board, and I'm not convinced. Like, the thing is, the Dark Hero's biggest claim to fame right now is that it can do the dynamic to static overclocking thing on the fly. But the thing is, like, if you just use regular PBO for most multi-threaded workloads, a 5950X is going to run somewhere around 4.4 gigahertz. In terms of what you can run static, you're probably going to top out at, like, 4.6. That's a 5% clock speed difference. So the static overclock on the Dark Hero, like if you use the dynamic static switching thing, at best you're getting like 5% more multi-threaded performance, which to me doesn't justify a $400 price tag. Like there's other overclocking stuff that the Dark Hero might be really, really good at, but unless like the PBO like gets you 95% of the performance on any motherboard that you would get with the Dark Hero and its static overclocking. So it's just like that to me is kind of like that's a cool feature if you like tinkering with your system. It's completely, but from a sort of performance per dollar perspective, it is a completely bloody pointless feature. And as for competitive overclocking, I can't see it being useful either, because it's like, if you're running Cinebench, you're not also running you're not running SuperPi, right? Like, you're not going to bench Cinebench and then use the exact same settings to bench SuperPi 32 million. Nobody does that. SuperPi 32 million is a single-threaded workload. So that's a really pointless feature. So for like day-to-day usage, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because Ryzen isn't that, like, PBO isn't that bad, in my experience. Like, it's, it's not incredible, but it's not that bad. And from like competitive overclocking, like it's just bloody pointless because nobody runs. Like, unless there's no benchmark that is both single-threaded and multi-threaded that we on hardware bot gives you like a combined score of both. So yeah, like I think it's a cool feature. I'd love to play with it. I just think it would have been way cooler if Asus had it available on like a $250 B550 board instead of a $400 X570. Because it's just like you're gonna pay, because like you can get very capable overclocking boards at around the $300 price point, or even below. Like you can get $200 B550s that are really really good at overclocking. And then it's like, yeah, so you're gonna pay anywhere between 33% and double 33% more and double the price of a perfectly capable motherboard in order to get a feature that might give you 5% more multi-threaded performance. Seems pretty stupid in my opinion. Okay, like I'm not saying it's not a cool feature. I just think it's priced incorrectly for what it does. Anyway, let's start taking on some of the YouTube comments. Bzion GN, 29 minutes. Bzion on his own channel, 2.5 hours. Well, I cover like literally all of the B550 and X570 motherboards in my 2.5 hour video. I love having to repeat myself so much. Anyways, looking at the probably BZ's where it's patient. Being able to edit Buildzoid's endless ramblings. I sent the Gamers Nexus got sent a 31-minute video. They turned it into a 29-minute video. There wasn't any endless ramblings. What about the X570 Dark Hero? I've just addressed that. Interesting to see no Dark Hero and X570 Tomahawk in the list. So the problem with the Tomahawk, as far as I'm concerned, is where is it? X570 Tomahawk, right? 220 bucks. Oh, now it's actually reasonable. Not slightly more reasonably priced, but this is a $220 board, right? And the cheapest X570 I recommend is the Tough, which is... Oh, the Elite's pretty cheap right now. That's neat. Where's the bloody Tough? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so that's like a $190 board. So you save 30 bucks. And the thing with X570 is like the main reason to buy an X570 motherboard at all, instead of just getting a B550, is because you need a bunch of SATA ports or you want two M.2 slots that run PCIe 4.0. Now, if we look at the Tomahawk, which we can't see anything on here, why don't they have a link to the manufacturer's website? Like, that would be pretty cool, don't you think? Anyway, X570... Oh, hell. So, if we look at the Tomahawk, you get two M.2 slots, same as the Tough. You get 3 SATA ports, 6 SATA ports instead of 8, so less than this Tough. You do get an internal Type-C connector, which is pretty useful, but like troubleshooting LEDs are present on both boards. The rear I/O on this is a little bit better. Like, this is not a bad motherboard. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like, I think... Well, actually, there's also the Tough Pro somewhere. Where is it? X570 Tomahawk, and this. Like, this is the competitor to the Tomahawk, right? And this still has the 8 SATA ports, it has upgraded VRM cooling. Like, the VRM difference between, like, here's the thing. The Tomahawk is very sort of popular on Reddit because this thing has an absolutely great VRM. But my question to most of the people who are like, ooh, I'm buying a Tomahawk, is, so do you have a 5950X? Because if you don't have a 5950X, the VRM doesn't, like, it doesn't matter at all. So, and actually, even with a 5950X, something like the Tough would be mostly fine. Like, yeah, this is not going to run the coolest, but it'll be fine. And if you're just doing PBO, it'll still, like, it'll be more than fine, actually, because PBO doesn't tend to, like, the PBO doesn't pull as much power as static overclocks can. Anyway... So that's kind of the thing. So there's nothing wrong with this board. I just don't necessarily think it makes a ton of sense, right? Like, yeah, it has some cool features, mostly like the Type-C. But the thing is, like, this is a very similar feature set to the B550 Aorus Pro, except for the extra... I mean, here we're on the revision 1.0, but that doesn't, like, really... Actually, no, the revision 2 makes a big difference, because that adds the Type-C. Where is it? Yeah, like if you find the V2 of the B550 Aorus Pro, like you get the Type C, you get the troubleshooting LEDs, you get your 6 SATA ports. The only real downside here, you get, in my opinion, a better rear I/O. The main difference you get is like this doesn't have a second PCIe 4.0 M.2 slot, which I don't review SSDs. I have no interest in M.2 devices whatsoever. But from what reading other people's looking at other people's coverage of M.2 SSDs, a fast PCIe 3.0 SSD isn't really that much slower than a PCIe 4.0 SSD. Or at least it's not to most people, it's just not going to be noticeable that there's a difference in the speed. So it's kind of like, yeah. So nothing wrong with this board. It's just not super cost effective. I feel like you're spending $50 more to get an M.2 slot, which is like, well, sure. If you want to, go for it. Pay 50 extra for an M.2 slot. And if you really do just care about the M.2 slots, this is again, or actually not 50, but like $30, extra to get an M.2 slot. Or you could just get this instead, which would still get you the bloody M.2 slot. In which case, like, you're mostly paying extra for the Type-C connector. Anyway, so it's like, it's basically that, stopped me from recommending this. Also, there's the B550 Tomahawk, which is, I believe, like the same VRM. Significantly cheaper. Let's just close some of these down at this point. Now, the B550 Tomahawk didn't make it, basically, because it's the same price as the Aorus Pro, and it doesn't have so many USB ports. Let's close this. Oh, there's no convenient way to get back to the motherboard section of MSI's. Wait, is it Meg or is it Mag? It's Mag. I don't know why they have to make these silly distinctions. Just makes it more annoying. There, B550 Tomahawk. So, right, so this is like basically the same feature set as the Aorus Pro, except less SATA ports. And I mean, less USB ports, more networking. Which, if you're looking for that, that's cool. But again, it's like the thing is, like, this board, you're paying $30 more for a chipset, as far as I'm concerned. And it's just like, well, it doesn't really make much of a difference. Oh, I think the VRM on this is a little bit weaker. But again, like, this is going to run a 5950X just fine, so that doesn't really matter. Anyway, moving on. So that's why the X570 Tomahawk didn't make it into the list. It's just not the most cost-effective board that I could have had there. Wasn't this topic covered months ago? Yes, it was, but there's been some extra motherboards at it. No X570 Aorus Elite. That's basically an overpriced B5. I would rather have a B550 board. Thank you very much. I can't find the Aorus Pro V2. Yeah, that board's kind of hard to find, but Asus, while Gigabyte should be straight up discontinuing the original V1 because they can't get enough parts to build the V1. Like, some of the components used on the V1 are just not available anymore. Was literally looking up the decent boards were, and everything was from the X570 launch. Yeah, so this is a sort of update to the motherboard state. Surprised to see no Dark Hero. I've addressed that. Wish this video was made 5 months ago. If it was made 5 months ago, some of the choices would have been a bit different. I'm surprised that you have not covered that. Exactly what I needed. Everybody keeps asking about the X570 Tomahawk. I really don't get why people are so fixated on that motherboard. It's not a bad board, but it's $220 to basically get the same functionality as a $180 B550. Admittedly, you do get, an extra M.2. Well, no, you don't even get an extra M.2 slot. You get a faster M.2 slot, which is such a huge upgrade, isn't it? Again, I only use SATA SSD, so don't ask me about SSD performance. It's not something I particularly care about. But anyway, that's kind of that. Here, after I watched BZ's movie on this topic on HOC, I've addressed that. Yeah, everybody's just like, where's the Tomahawk? And it's like, honestly, I'm surprised more people, well, actually, no, I know exactly what's going on. Like, The thing is like the Tomahawk's been featured in a couple of YouTube videos, and so now everybody bloody loves it. Whereas Asus, as far as I'm not sure I've seen a single video about the Tough Pro from Asus, which in my opinion is just kind of a better featured motherboard, especially at the same price. And it used to be a little bit cheaper a couple days back, but where is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, like this. Right, so this is ever so slightly better featured than the Tomahawk, and it's just like, well, nobody knows about this. Because Asus didn't send it to any YouTubers to review. But, like, yeah, at this price, like, the thing is, my main problem is just, like, it's $220 to get similar functionality to a B550 board. With the exception of, you know, an extra, like, a faster M.2 slot, and it's just like, I don't know, guys. Spending $40 for an M.2 slot. Speed upgrade, because it's not even an extra one. It's kind of pointless in my opinion. Making a motherboard roundup for Steve's Normie channel. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Some older Buildzoid content for 5600 Xmobos. Literally any, like, the 6 cores will run on literally anything. The strongest VRM on B550 is the... No, it isn't. The strongest VRM on B550M. No, it still isn't. The B550 Mortar has a better VRM. Like, that has a 60 amp smart, yeah, it's on 60 amp smart power stages, if I'm not mistaken. And the 50 amp power stages at Gigabyte, like, there's a surprising performance gap between, like, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Now, between the 60s, 70s, and 90s, not much of a difference. Also, Gigabyte's heatsink is kind of awful. Anyway, Aorus can't find it, that's a comment about that. Do people still use SATA ports? I use SATA ports. So many SATA. Well, actually, currently I'm only using 3, but it's not because, like, if I'm planning more storage, I'm going to eventually probably end up using 6. What about the X5? So everybody wants the Tomahawk for some reason. Like, I'd love to know, like, specifically what all these people like so much about the Tomahawk. And most of them will be like, it's the VRM. And it's just like, but, like, this has a perfectly good VRM. This has, like, 10/12ths of the Tomahawk's VRM, if I remember correctly. So this is a perfectly good VRM as well. It has the same damn heatsink. Yeah. It's like the same damn VRM. So, like, if you want that VRM so much, just get the B550 board. Go away, ads. Actually, well, no, you won't get the, like, the full 12-phase V-core, but you'll still get most of it. Have they solved issue with XMP? There's XMP issues on so many boards. And I think at the start of the video, there should have been a disclaimer with me complaining about how terrible the current BIOSes are for the 5000 series. I don't know if that got cut out. It might have. I don't know how they saved 2 minutes on a 31-minute video. What else? Wondering V1, V2, is there some more than price and VRM changes? There's a Type-C port internal on the V2. That's why I recommend the V2, because if the Type-C port, then it's like there's a lot of people who want the Type-C port. Apparently there's cases that come with a Type-C port. I wouldn't know. I use a test bench. So, like, yeah, this is a very normie motherboard list, in my opinion. Mr. Overclocking perspective here. It's like I'm considering I'm considering things like bloody internal Type-C ports for this list. And apparently I'm too overclocking focused. A little surprised not seeing the TUF B550 M-ATX right below that MSI. This is a 30-minute video. Like, that's a perfectly good board, but it's just like actually when I first made the list, the TUF was in it, the B550M. And then I was looking at it, and like the main reason I like the TUF is because it has more USB ports on the back than the Mortar does. And then I sat there thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, but apparently I'm an anomaly with how many bloody USB ports I need, so I put the Mortar in the video. And I've recommended the TUF in a different video, I think, at some point in time. If the video was allowed to be 40 minutes longer, there'd be like 3 or 4 more motherboards in there. Depending, because again, it's like most of the differences you see between the motherboard, like right now, there's not like, the biggest differences between a lot of the motherboards is just like, what kind of connectors do you want, right? And that's where you make most of your decisions, unless you're really specifically focused on overclocking, in which case, yeah, it gets far more difficult. But, you know, this is a normie motherboard list. No X570 Strix E or Crosshair 8 Hero. Why would those be on the list? Like, the Strix E just kind of doesn't do anything the Taichi doesn't do, except maybe not have a terrible BIOS. But in that case, I would still rather have a Unify. And the Crosshair 8 Hero is just, like, I'd actually, like, Crosshair 8 Hero, I would rather have an X570 Master. Or a Dark Hero, because as far as I know, Asus hasn't updated the memory topology on the original Hero. Like, maybe they did, but like, I don't have any information on that, so... And I kind of doubt it, because as far as I know, 8GB are the only ones to have, like, redone their memory topology on all of their X570 boards. Another person wondering about the Tomahawk, does the X570 Elite have the same or better performance than B550 Pro? It's worse. Like, from a memory overclocking perspective, the Pro is better. From a VRM thermal perspective, the Pro is better. Basically, just get the bloody Pro. Seriously, the low-end X570 motherboards are like bad B550s with an expensive chipset most of the time. Like the X570 Elite is most similar in terms of its build quality, like overclocking capabilities, to the B550 Elite, a motherboard that's like $150. So, yeah, like this isn't even, like, that's the thing, is like the money that gets saved on the chipset can be put into building a better motherboard. That's why I don't like the X570 chipset so much, other than the fact that it also screws over BCLK overclocking. Why no X5? Another Tomahawk question. Confusing since your earlier X570 highlights different models. Yeah, because that was X570 motherboards only, but now we have B550 motherboards that just completely invalidate the existence a lot of the cheaper X570 boards, as far as I'm concerned. And the Gigabyte Aorus Master. Yeah, so the problem there was, like, I couldn't figure out how to justify it over the Taichi. How is the ASRock better than the Master? It isn't. It's also $300. It's also like the Taichi's $300 and the Master's $350. So that's kind of like, from a normie, like, if this list was like skewed towards my preferences in motherboards, there would be a Master and there'd be no ASRock motherboards at all. Like, there just wouldn't be any ASRocks. But I tried to gear this towards, you know, people who build systems and then forget to enable XMP. So we've got a bunch of normie motherboards. A Pro on sale, $125. Glad to hear that. Where does the Asus Impact DTX board fit into this? It's like a really expensive version of the ITX X570 from Asus. Surprised the X570 Tomahawk didn't get a mention. I've already addressed that. Tomahawk. Everybody wants the bloody Tomahawk. Like, I'd love to see why some of these people want a Tomahawk, because I'm 99% certain most of them are. But the VRM is so cool, and it's like, yeah, so you can run your 5600 at, like, stock. Even if you are overclocking your 5600, the VRM doesn't matter. You can overclock a 5600 on, like, the cheapest of the cheap B550 motherboards, or even B450s, once they get support. Actually, some of them already have support, so, yeah, like, that's the thing. Anyway, what about the more Tomahawk questions? Anything above 2133 not working on B550 Tomahawk at the moment? Yeah, that sounds like AMD messing with the AGSA. That's like the thing. Like, right now, there's XMP support's awful. Though maybe, well, 2133 is really low. He might have the memory installed in the wrong memory slots. In which case, that really, because daisy chain motherboards, you put the memory sticks in the wrong slots. It does, like, some of them will straight up not post. Well, actually, no. If he's on an MSI board, it'll tell you if you do that. Like, when it boots up, it'll give you a warning that, hey, you put your memory in the wrong DIMM slots. Go fix it. So I guess he does have them in the right memory slots. But the thing is, AMD's screwing with the AGSA, and a side effect of that is, like, everything is randomly breaking. Driving an hour to pick up a Dark Hero. Yeah, a perfectly good choice. That's just not a very cost-effective choice. But like I'm assuming you already have, like, some pretty expensive RAM, a pretty expensive GPU, you know, maybe like an RTX 3080. And if you have an RTX 3080, go knock yourself out. Buy a Dark Hero. Because quite frankly, like, it's not going to make a difference to your ability to afford a 3090, is it? But if you're like if you're on like a if you're making the choice between a 3060 Ti and a 3070 and or having a Dark Hero, then it's like get the bloody 3070 and get a cheaper board. What about the more Tomahawk? Wait, I think I read that one. Tomahawk again. Aorus Pro V2 is not the V2 anyone know where to find one in NA. I have looked everywhere. I don't know. There's a chance that the retailers aren't making a distinction, which would really suck. B550 Aorus Master, best VRMs plus Wi-Fi, 2.5 gig. Horrible dual BIOS implementation. Like, seriously. Gigabyte made one mistake with that motherboard, and that one mistake was including a second BIOS chip. Best budget motherboards for Ryzen. Yeah, like it should have been best value, because if it was just straight up best motherboards, I would have not bothered with the low end. X570 Aorus Master, no mention. The thing is just like the main reason I like the Master is because it's great at overclocking and it's not made by ASRock. Well, no, it's mostly just, actually, it's not even the not made by ASRock, it's just like, it's great at overclocking, but Gigabyte's BIOS is kind of annoying to work with, which is fine for me, but for most people, it's just like, not. So, like, I like that board, it's just that I couldn't, like, also, I have a 30-minute time limit, right? So it's like, how do I fit all these boards in? Like, this is one of the boards that I really wanted to include, but it was just like the main reason I like, and the thing is, I'm not sure for most people, you won't know, like for most people, you won't notice a difference in terms of overclocking capabilities between between a Unify and a Master, or really even a Tai Chi. You might actually, I think out of those three boards, like if I was like blind test, like I think if I was blind testing people for overclocking on a Unify versus a Master versus a Tai Chi, most of the people would be most successful with the Unify, just because the BIOS is so much easier to navigate. Also, unless you know that you need to disable the dual BIOS on the Aorus Master, it's super obnoxious. ASRock B550 Pro 4 starting to have a USB error. It would non-stop connect, disconnect. Yeah, that's just AMD's AGSA being stupid. Like, don't buy Ryzen don't buy Ryzen right after launch, because AMD tends to break everything. B550i is only $30 more expensive than B550i Aorus Pro AX. Then buy it. Like, I would have rather saved the $30 and spent them on a better memory kit or something. But if you like the feature set of the B550i so much, then go for it. That's $30 that could go into better RAM, or a better CPU cooler, or a better power supply, or a better anything else than your motherboard. But yeah, if you need more USB ports or something, then go. I don't know that this even has more USB ports. I'm pretty sure they're on like feature parity, except this kind of arguably has a better VRM cooling setup. Not a better VRM itself, because the power stages are garbage, but yeah, like, also, this board has god-awful voltage controls. You can't set VTT DDR in the useful direction. Just like, so if you're into memory overclocking, this motherboard is like the world's biggest disappointment. Because it's actually really good at memory overclocking, you just can't set the VTT DDR voltage, which is just like, just Asus things. Like, I don't even know how they did that, because, like, there's motherboards where you can't set the VTT DDR at all. But then there's the Asus boards, where you can only raise it, which is like, why would you want to raise VTT DDR? Like, ever. Anyway, kind of surprised B550 Tomahawk and Gaming Edge Wi-Fi was not on the list. Well, the Gaming Edge is like a slightly more expensive version of the B550A Pro, and it's just, like, hard to justify. Gaming Meg Plus, B550 Gaming Mega Plus, that's the same, again, that's the like slightly more expensive A Pro, with, I think, Wi-Fi or something, which is just like, whatever. Like, if you want that, go for it. Good thing I bought I don't know, oh, I guess because the stock might get wiped out after this video. Aorus B550 Amazon link does have Wi-Fi. Oh, that's the V1. Well, that's fine. Well, the main difference with the that's really annoying that Gigabyte has, like, the V1 and V2. And, like, the V2, like, there's not, like, the biggest difference from a normal user perspective is the internal Type-C port, which if you don't need that, then the V1 doesn't, you know, affect you in any way, but Anyway, Aorus Master still good? Yes, still good. It's just hard to fit into a list like this. In addition to what BZ said about X570 Taichi, the reason I picked it up, it has internal Thunderbolt 3 header. There's a bunch of B550 boards that also have that. But yeah, if you need that on top of all the other features it has, sure, that makes perfect sense. I wonder if for ITX the B550 from Asus is a good replacement. No, it isn't. They downgraded the VRM. And I'm so annoyed about that. But wait, where's my B550E gaming? That's one of the really like that board is like $250 by MSRP, and at $250 it just doesn't make sense to buy a B550 board. It mostly just doesn't make sense to buy a B550 board at $250. Really, I don't like the $250 price point in general for AM4. Because, like, you get the really, really, maxed out motherboards start at, like, $300. And then below $200, you have the really good value boards. And then in between $200 and $300, you have the motherboards where it's like, this is not that much better than a $200 board, but it is $50 more expensive. Or it's way worse than a $300 board, but $50 cheaper. It's just like, why? Anyway, MSI MPG Gaming Plus seeing really good reviews. Yeah, this is all the board, assuming he's referring to the B550. Me not mentioning the board doesn't mean the board is bad. It's just didn't make it bloody into the list. The list is 30 minutes, video's 30 minutes long. I can't fit every bloody motherboard. That's okay. I feel like I don't trust MSI though. Well, I mean, with my experiences with motherboard vendors so far, I can't trust anyone. Actually, I think MSI is the only vendor that hasn't killed a CPU for me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't had a CPU die for no reason in an MSI board. Yet. Keyword being yet. Probably because I just straight up avoid everything low end for, like, a lot of the really, really low end boards from MSI, I just straight up avoid those. You should add BioStar to your motherboard videos. I have no idea if their motherboards are any good, and I've heard from a lot of other people that they're terrible. Though I am toying with the idea of probably buying a BioStar motherboard just to see if it is actually as bad as I expect it to be. I hope to be pleasantly surprised. Just bought a B550 Tomahawk, was the same price as B550A Pro. Well, that's a really good deal. I bought an Aorus Elite V2, and I'm facing XMP issues where the BIOS simply doesn't boot at all. Might be BIOS issue, like that might be AGSA issues, or I don't know what your XMP is. If it's 3200 CL12, then and it doesn't work, then it's either AGSA or you're in the wrong DIMM slots. If you are in the right DIMM slots and it still doesn't work, it's probably the AGSA. You can try testing a bunch of different BIOS versions, hope that one of them fixes it, unless your XMP is like 4600 megahertz, in which case, yeah, you can give up on that. That's never going to work. Is the Amazon link for B550 Aorus Pro V2 correct? I don't know. I kind of doubt it is, considering how many people are asking. I'm interested to know why B550 Tough didn't get in the video. Basically, like, the thing is, the B550 Tough, the B550 Tomahawk, and the B550A Pro from Gigabyte, B550 Pro from Gigabyte, man, I hate the fact that Pro is like a standardized motherboard name, because it's like, I have a B550 Pro from who? You can have it from, actually, I don't think Asus has one. But anyway, but ASRock does have one, because there's like the Pro, well, those are Pro 4s. So anyway, the thing is like, it's very similar in terms of feature set to the Aorus Pro, and I just kind of like the feature set of the Aorus Pro more than I like the feature set of the Tough. But hey, if you like the Tough feature set, go for it. It's a perfectly good board. Like, technically at the start of the video, I should have mentioned, I don't know if this got cut. I haven't actually watched the video. I don't particularly like listening to myself. But I should have mentioned that basically any motherboard above like $150 is perfectly capable of overclocking even a 5950X. So, you know, at that point, most of the distinctions are about the feature set and maybe the memory overclocking. That 180 USD mini ITX board will be 200 USD by the time it arrives in our country. Well, yeah, that is very unfortunate. VZ is king. Thanks. Did you review all the large majority of X570 motherboards to show these three? I tested a lot of X570 motherboards. But not the majority of them. I'm reading my Google searches. Why Tough X570, not X570 Tough Pro? Because this one's $30 more expensive, and all it really does is change heat sinks and add some better networking, which you can get similar networking on a B550 motherboard. So, like this is the thing. It's just like there are very minor incremental upgrades between a lot of these motherboards and very large price increases to go along with them. So it doesn't, like, unless you have a very specific need for a certain feature, along with some other set of features, a lot of these motherboards just kind of aren't very cost effective. You got him down to sub 30 minutes. You're having an effect. No, he isn't. This video is going to be an hour at this rate. HOC plus GN are my first to-go channels about PC tech for reviews. Just bought GN there. MSI Tomahawk Wi-Fi. You liked it in your review. Yeah, I still like it. I just don't think it makes a bunch of sense at $220 bloody dollars. Where does the X570 Prime Pro sit within these reviews? It's in the $250 price range, which I just generally dislike because of the cost effectiveness. It's a good board. It's just not cost effective. What about the MSI Unify? I really, really like the Unify. Unfortunately, it's not a very normie motherboard. So yeah, it's like if somebody goes to me like, I don't care about SATA ports, I just want good overclocking, and I hate it. I want a 300, I want 3 M.2 slots and great overclocking support. Unify. That's when you get the Unify. If you don't care about overclocking, you can go get a Taichi. Because you don't care about overclocking, so you can get a Taichi instead and get more sort of stuff. Though I guess you do lose you get 1 gig LAN instead of 2.5 gig LAN. So if you care about the 2.5 gig, Unify is better in that case. Anyway, I bet if the Gigabyte V550 Aorus Pro AX would beat the Pro V2 as the best all-rounder, it's like the Pro V2 but with Wi-Fi. It's not, because the V2 has the internal Type-C. So this is like, if you care about the Wi-Fi, then yeah, that's better. But if you don't care about the Wi-Fi, also the Pro AX is more expensive. So that kind of thing, well, that's kind of the issue there. Like, I put way too much time into figuring out which motherboards to put into this list. So at this point, you can basically throw any motherboard at me, and it's just like, so why wouldn't you get this B550 motherboard instead? It's like, I need 3 M.2 slots with PCIe 4.0. Okay, go get yourself an X570. You're missing the X570 Unify. It's not very easy to... like, the Unify's main selling point is it's way better at overclocking than the ASRock board. But if you're just doing PBO and XMP, that doesn't really matter. Right? Which is what I assume most people are probably going to do anyway. So again, this motherboard roundup is more for normies than for what I actually like in my motherboards. What happened to the X570 Aorus Master? The video would be too long if I included it. There was a version of this video where I had the Unify and I had the Master, and there was a bunch of other boards. Because the thing is like, when I was doing it, it was like, either I include a bunch of motherboards because I like their overclocking capabilities, but then, like, I want to also be fair with the motherboards that get included, right? So it's like, if I include one motherboard for being great at overclocking, then I should also include some of the other great overclocking motherboards. And at that point, the video ended up being like 40 bloody minutes, and yeah, no, that can't do that on Gamers Nexus. So instead, I went the opposite direction, where I was like, okay, screw it. We're not, like, no motherboard is getting into the list just on its overclocking capabilities alone, and we ended up with this extremely normie list that I'm personally not a fan of. Even though, like, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of the motherboards, I just don't like them very much because they're not particularly great at overclocking. No X570 Aorus addressed. Where can you find number of PCB layers for different boards? So with Gigabyte, you can kind of tell by looking. Actually, with most of the boards, you can kind of tell by looking. If you can see the memory traces, actually, no, the ASRock, you can't. But with Gigabyte, MSI, oh man, I shouldn't say that. Like, if I say how I figure out layer counts, they're going to start doing stuff to hide the layer counts. So, no. I'm not going to talk about that. But there's a way to figure it out. I'm just not, like... well, actually, one of the easiest ways you can tell is the QVL for a lot of the boards. Because the higher the layer count, the higher the max frequencies that the QVLs will support. Except if you have, like, an old 6-layer topology versus a new 6-layer. Where the new 6 layers are, like, so much better than the old ones. Got X570 and B450 ASRock motherboard. Didn't regret. Amazing board. See, this guy's a normie. He likes ASRock motherboards. That's proof. It's like, just got an Asus TUF Gaming X570 Plus with Ryzen 5600X. This guy apparently needs X570 for his 5600 for some reason. I picked up X570 Taichi as I heard a lot of good things about it. Yeah, it's got a lot of ports. I still don't like the BIOS. I didn't know ASRock Creator Board existed. I have a Vision D with Thunderbolt port as well, but it's like way less. It does not have the 10... Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing, is like, I really like... This is a board that I'm a huge fan of, but it's just like... It literally only adds the Thunderbolt. And there's also a bunch of, like, if you can buy a Thunderbolt add-in card. And, like, see that there? That right next to the SATA ports? That's a Thunderbolt header. So you can add a Thunderbolt card onto this. Also, the Thunderbolt on the Vision doesn't have video in, if I remember correctly. It only has video, like, it doesn't have, like, on the Creator, you can run an HDMI cable from, like, or DisplayPort cable from your GPU to the motherboard, and it'll feed DisplayPort through the Thunderbolt output. But I don't believe the Vision does that. Right? I might be wrong about that, though. But I'm pretty sure this doesn't do Thunderbolt pass-through, which is the main reason that 2x video... Oh, so I'm wrong about that, apparently. Where's the input? Because, like, on the Creator, you have, like, this horrible DisplayPort on the inside, like, right... Well, actually, it's not yeah, no, it is horrible. I don't know how you're going to plug that in. But there's, like, a DisplayPort right here that goes to the Thunderbolt chipset, but this board... Oh, there's a DisplayPort. I'm blind. Yeah, so that's display in. Okay, well, my bad. That's a DisplayPort in right there. I thought that was a display out, but no, that's it, display in. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, because there's, like, a bunch of boards that... Oh, no, what does this have? Oh, this just has HDMI. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm an idiot. Anyway, I got an X570 Gaming F from Asus. It's a perfectly good board. I just don't think it's super cost effective. Like, literally everything between $200 and $300 is just, like, not the most cost effective motherboard. But if you want one for some reason, knock yourself out there, fine. Well, the MSI B550M mortar, except for, like, like one board. Actually, the ASRock ones. They're still mostly fine. Will the MSI B550M mortar do at least 4x8 at 4000 C14? Probably not. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to work. Especially 4x8 B-die. That like, maybe if you fiddle with the like memory settings forever, but that's not going to work very quickly. B550 Aorus Pro AC Rev 1.x, is this as good as the V2? Can't find V2. You just lose the Type-C port. Wasn't the X570 your go-to? Which one? I love how he says X570, but doesn't mention which one. Thoughts on X570E gaming? Too expensive. Asus B550E? Too expensive. Stop teasing us with the best ofs. Give us the best of the worst. This is the best of the worst. This is all motherboards that are, like, in the list because they have more bloody connectors instead of actually being things I care about. B550 Aorus Pro has widespread XMP and USB issues. There are a lot of motherboards with XMP and USB issues right now because the issue is, like, so fun fact about how AMD BIOS works. AMD gives the motherboard vendors a blob called the AGSA. The AGSA is constantly full of bugs for, like, 6 months, like, for basically 6 months from launch. The AGSA, like, is full of bugs. So the motherboard vendors keep coming up with workarounds for the various bugs. And AMD keeps doing stuff to the AGSA, you know, also fixing bugs and doing that kind of thing. But like with most software development, you fix a bug and produce more bugs. So you end up with, like the USB port issues weren't a thing, or at least wasn't anywhere near as bad as it is right now, as it is on some of the BIOSes that came out after 5000 series launch, because AMD started working on new features in the AGSA. The side effects of those new features is the USB port stopped bloody working. And also AMD tends to fiddle around with the, like, well, different AGSA having completely different memory overclocking behavior is just completely normal. Like, there's actually a BIOS on the B550 Master, which is just completely unusable for memory overclocking. That came out before the 5000 series launch. That was one of the, like, preparing for 5000 series launch BIOSes. That one's awful. Like, don't use it. It's so bad. And you know, and that's just kind of the way of AMD BIOS, because yeah, yeah, it just is what it is. You kind of sometimes have similar issue. Well, the USB, I think there's been in the past also Intel platforms where USB ports didn't work. But like, yeah, like basically if you buy anything directly after launch, it's probably going to be full of bugs. Don't pre-order. And honestly, probably just don't buy anything like, unless you, like, this is early adopter tax. You buy the product right after launch and all, like, you're going to be part of the beta testing team, because like motherboards and CPUs, like all of this stuff is super complex. So validating that absolutely everything works perfectly in all scenarios, very difficult. Though the USB port issues are just super weird. Like, I really don't know how those got through. Because, like, as far as I know, they're very widespread, so I don't know how AMD didn't notice that they managed to break USB ports. But then again, this is AMD, so, you know, what did you expect? No B550M Steel Legend. I'd rather have the Gigabyte board. Hey guys, what do you think about the TUF B550? It's perfectly fine. It just kind of like, it has a different mix of internal connectors from the mortar. And if you want a better, like if you care more about your internal connectors, mortar's better. If you care more about the rear I/O, the TUF is better. Forgot AORS X5. No, there just wasn't any time. Steve wanted a 30-minute video. I couldn't have my 20-ish motherboards from the, yeah, I think there was like 20 motherboards in the original list I had. So even at like, you know, 2 minutes per board, I was producing a 40-minute video, whereas I ended up cutting it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. So there's like, was it 20? It was a lot of boards. Like the original list that I came up with was a lot of freaking boards, and there was just no way it was doing I was doing it in 30 minutes. So, yeah. Lots of motherboards got axed against my preference. The Tomahawk just isn't cost effective, so I stand by the fact that that's not in the video. The Master got cut because I don't have the time to cover all the boards. The Hero, the Dark Hero, I'm not sure I would actually, like, I don't think it's a bad board, but I'm not sure it makes sense to most people. Also, fun fact about the Hero, it's a X570 with 2 M.2 slots at the $400 price tag, which I think is really dumb, considering literally every other motherboard in that price range has at least well, no, there's also the Creator from ASRock, but like Master, Unify, Ace, Taichi, Phantom Gaming, all those boards have 3 M.2 slots. And then there's the Asus Hero, which has 2. Which I've heard that apparently people care about M.2 slots. Again, not something I care about. I actually really don't mind what Asus has in terms of storage on the Hero. But anyway, will you do one for a TRX 40? I've done one for TRX 40 in the past. You're not very good at using the YouTube search function if you can't find it. I think I've done one. Actually, let's check if I've done one. Oh, no, that's the default. No. Default YouTube page. TRX 40. Oh, would you look at that? I did do one. It's 40 bloody minutes. Steve! Why was that one allowed to be long? And this one has to be bloody 30 minutes. Oh, I guess it's to hit the Christmas shoppers, I guess. See, if I could have done a 40-minute, almost 40-minute video like this, then I would have, like, we'd have a lot more overclocking boards in there. TUF Gaming X570, best bang for buck X570 Mobo. I mean, X570 isn't very good bang for the buck at the vast majority of the time, but it's not, yeah, it probably is. Unless you can get like, because like the biggest benefit I see to X570 is that you can get a bunch of M.2 slots. Which, like, is hard to do on B550. Yeah, so that doesn't do it. No. What? Why is this 207? So yeah, that's awful. That's worse. Okay, no, yeah, so you still only get like two. Where's the first board that gives you 3? I guess it's the B550. Oh, B550 Unify, which gives you 4. The way this does that is it steals lane from your CPU. It steals lanes from your CPU, which I'm not a fan of. But like with PCIe 4.0, that doesn't make too much of a difference. Yeah, but this thing's 300, at which point you have like the $300 B550 Taichi, the $300 X570 Taichi, the $300 X570 Unify. So this is where the X570 boards kind of hit maxed out feature set. Below that, it's kind of like you could still very strong, like I would still strongly lean towards a B550 instead. Anyway, B450 BIOS update to avoid spending money, but I've started to consider new MOBO. X570 Aorus Elite would have thermal sensor port for water cooling loop temp monitoring. Okay, I don't believe the link to the B5. This sounds like it isn't. Whereas the X570 Tomahawk costs too much. No love for the Asus TUF. Video had to be short. Like if I could have had the original like 20 motherboard list, that one was on it. Also, you place B450M. Oh, so that's actually not even like the guy on Reddit doing that. That's straight up GN doing it. Okay, I'll tell them. Did they actually? Where is it? Oh, they did link the B450. Why did they? No, that's the B550. Yeah, that's the B550. Damn, it's wait, 120. Is it supposed to be that cheap? What the hell is up with motherboard prices in Europe? Like, we have a B550E Strix for like 200 quid recently. Or I'm not sure if it's still here, but it was at 200 quid for a while. Which is like way more, like in terms of its price position, it's way more competitive in the EU than it is in, or well, EU and UK, rather than in the US. But anyway, am I going to go through all of these? I don't think I should do that. No, okay, yeah, there's too many comments. How many comments are there at this point? 500, yeah, okay, we're just going to call it a day at this point. Yeah, video's an hour. Perfect time to stop. So there, that should give you some of the, some insight onto my motherboard choices here. As much as actually, I'm going to check if there's any more Reddit comments, because freaking... Nah, it doesn't look like there's any more. Oh, wait, no, there is. 570 TUF. It says Z. Oh. It's like a completely different board if it's... What? How's the Z? You have the Z490 then, I guess. Wait, what? What the... I don't... Not gonna think about it. Anyway, so yeah, that's it for my follow-up to that. It's the B550 mortar, not the B450. So only thing that mattered for that, as you can clearly see, no, it wasn't, because if it was just the VRM, then the B550 Master would have made it on, but it didn't, because that board is horrible to work with. It's a great, like, it's a perfectly capable overclocking board, horrible to work with. That's like the thing, like, there's a distinction between a motherboard being easy to use and a motherboard being capable. It's in the uncut version. That's not the uncut version, actually. Yeah, he linked what I thought he did. It's not. This isn't the uncut version. Gamers Nexus got a very different video that was 30 minutes long, and that got converted into this. And then there's this thing that's covered up by ads, which is a glorious 2 hours and 30 minutes going through every single video, almost every single B550 and X570 motherboard. I get very bored around halfway through the video. Anyway, so yeah. There. That's it. That's all I really want to say about the AM4 motherboard roundup, which I don't consider it best motherboards. It's like I'm going to tell Steve to change it to best value motherboards. Because the thing is, like, I don't, like, well, there's an argument to be made that best value is also automatically the best, because logically, once you have all the functionality that you want, you also want the functionality at the lowest possible price point. Right? Like, that's the next way how you improve the bestness of a motherboard. Right? Because, like, well, yeah, because if you just go, like, if you just say best in a void, then it's like, we can just spend, like, you can just keep jacking up the price of the motherboard until it does everything. And it's like, well, now it's the best. It also costs like $1,000. It also doesn't, there also isn't a motherboard on the AM4 chipset that actually just kind of does everything. Just because of the, well, AM4 chipset, AM4 socket. There's no AM4 motherboard that actually does everything that I would want a motherboard to do. So you always have some choices that you have to make. Yeah, that's it. Also, I really need to get, like, ad block for my Google Chrome. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe to Gamers Nexus and me. What else was there? Like, share, subscribe. Leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. I'm not going to deal with any more motherboard questions at this point. I'm super done with this. I have no idea how done I am with this. What else was there? Right, if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There's a link to that down in the description below. There's also the HOC Teespring store where you can pick up shirts, stickers, posters, you know, the usual YouTuber merch. Both of those help out immensely with running the channel, so please check out the links to Patreon and Teespring. Right now, well, the one thing I'm kind of considering buying is a B550 BioStar motherboard, which I'm probably going to regret. It should be interesting. But yeah, you know, that's the kind of thing that the Patreon and Teespring goes towards. So, yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.